International production is also variable, but in kind of average, for example, Australia produce like 25,000 tons of kernels. This is what we eat.
Kernels, yes.
Yeah, and actually maybe South Africa around 20 and Kenya only 10. But it is not because...
That is per year?
Yes, per year.
Per year.
Yeah, and actually this is because very often one processor needs to buy 8, sometimes even 10 kgs from farmers, and because of that it is never easy to have like a fair farmer price, because it is very variable per quality, and this is that we need to work on. This is actually what quality means, which is one aspect. There are of course many other aspects. As you already mentioned before, in Kenya there is still a lot of tetraphylla, Macadamia tetraphylla, all variety, and grafted, which is Macadamia.
Alexander, you've mentioned something very important when you're doing a comparison of how Australia, South Africa and Kenya is doing. For example, Australia, with 4 kg of nut in shell, they're able to produce about 1 kg of kernel.
Yeah, this is kind of average, of course, always depends on...
Yes, an average, all right.
Yes.
And with Kenya, we're about 8 kg of nut in shell. That's when you can get about?
Yes, this is what we, in professional terms, this is called the kernel recovery.
Yes.
The share of the kernels that you got from the, and average for Kenya is only 14%.
Right.
In Australia, it goes to 25. In some good years, it is in 30%.
All right. So that means there is need to improve our quality of nuts.
Yes, on the farmer side.
Yes.
And also what I always suggesting, but when I face the reality, I think it's very difficult currently, but we hope that we can work on this in the medium to long term, is to pay farmer per quality. This is actually how South African and especially Australian farmers are paid. They even publish, it's very transparent. Here in Kenya, we lack transparency. And for example, in Australia, they publish what is the average kernel recovery. So actually, but on the other hand, they have huge farmers, and those farmers also engage in processing. So most of the farmers, they're already drying their nuts. So they not only harvest them and sell to processors, but they also dry nuts. And very difficult, but somehow still the sector fully depends on aggregators, or let's say brokers or intermediators, people who are collecting a huge quality of the farmers, and they're actually mixing the nuts of the different quality from different farmers. And technology can be like digital or very good and bad quality, and because of that we always have like the same price for each farmer. The only exception is organic certification.
All right. Great. Now, Mr. Alexander, also talk to us about which markets are very important in the macadamia farming in the international space, and if Kenya is playing in those countries as of now.
Yes, Kenya is actually present in all of the biggest markets in the world.
Maybe you can break down to us which markets these
Yes,
are.
actually the United States is the biggest one, with the largest share, so almost like a half. But it depends from the year to year. Almost half of that go to the United States, and luckily for Kenya, Kenya is very active in the European market. So, for example, not South Africa, but Australia, although the biggest producer in the world, and actually macadamia tree originates from each country, took from initially in the 60s or even before this tree, they are ranked only 3rd in Europe. So Kenya has very good chance in Europe because they are the second in the European market, although they don't produce, they are in production, they are actually the 3rd.
Right. But we're also exporting to countries like China, and we can clearly see that they're increasing their production. Maybe what will happen to countries like us who also depend on them when it reaches a point where China is fully sustainable, they can depend on themselves when it comes to macadamia production? Will there now be need for us to expand our markets in the macadamia sector? Yeah,
China as a market is quite tricky to understand, and also quite tricky to target, because currently most of the, as you perhaps we for certainly know that export of kernels decreased compared to 2023 and increased, of course, in shell not so. And this means that actually we are supplying Chinese buyers with raw material. So they process that, and after that they even sometimes re-export those. Although most of this is consumed within China, although they are believed now to become like the second biggest producer, they still depend a lot of imports. import. So they import, but in the long term, if they really start to have like a good yields and good quality, they can easily become competitor. So currently we are actually supplying our competitors.
All right. Now, as you wind up this conversation, we are exporting kernels, which is the processed nuts, and we're also now doing nut in shell,
Yes.
right? But for sustainability in this space, you know, so very many processors felt like it was a very tricky thing for us to start exporting nut in shell. Maybe in your opinion, what would be the most sustainable way for us to handle our international market? Should we focus on the nut in shell or also the kernels?
It depends. Also, Australia, also, which is actually the biggest supplier, they also export every year quite huge quantities of nut in shell. But actually, those nut in shell are with some added value, like you have on the photo in studio. They are already pre-cracked and very often flavored, and this is kind of value addition. So if those nut in shell will be allowed to export, it will be good. But most of Kenyan processors, except some of the Chinese one, because there are also Chinese processors here in Kenya, they are get used to this technology, although it's not very difficult. They cut it and put the flavor, etc. So in my opinion, still kernel export is much more competitive. I think we need to focus on this kernel export, but also to improve equipment, etc. Kenya is able to do this. And a lot of international market promotion is needed. I would like to maybe to finish, I don't know how much time we have with this point, because big competitors like South Africa and Australia, they are receiving huge amount of money from their governments to go internationally to promote. They are attending every trade event in the world. They're always present with a huge marketing and promotion. And Kenyan industry and processors are very brave people who are fighting on their own, actually. You can never see any support from the government to pay them, for example, booth, so they exhibit of the big trade events international United States or in Europe. So some more support for promotion is very important, because Kenyan are very not easy to fight against so huge competition who support invest so much money in promotion.
Right. Thank you so very much, Mr. Alex, for your absolutely insightful comments on what we can do as a country to improve our competitiveness in the international market when it comes to macadamia farming.